Hello, sir.
Shalom, shalom.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well, thank God. Fortunately, as I'm sure you know, there are many, many fires in Israel right now due to the rockets. So,
Mhm.
a specific town up north is had to evacuate completely because the houses are going on fire, and hopefully, the firemen, my brother-in-law being one of them, hopefully they will stop that.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of arson the last few days, also with a lot of fires in Jerusalem and other places, which is also very,
Mhm.
very, very hard, as you know. And they just reported right now that there's like three more or four more of the prisoners, of the hostages, were dead. I wonder if the number 30 that people are like throwing out there, maybe that's like the only, maybe those are the only 30 that Hamas actually has, like,
Mhm.
there's this number 130 that we've been talking about, but maybe in reality that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. Seems likely everything that's been going on, but yeah. Um,
How about you? How's the new job transitioning working?
it's been good. Yeah. Getting acclimated, doing some more stuff. I'm happy that I'm still able to put this together, get this to work, and some other stuff. So it's been nice.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative as well. I'm glad that could happen, and
Mhm.
I think that's exemplifying, I mean, the things that we're learning of, like, a good balance. um, Hello, Kirk. I think it reminds me of my brother. My brother, years and years ago, when he was working as a lawyer in this law firm in Tel Aviv, this big law firm. uh, he wanted to leave, and the firm was like, "No, you can't leave. What are you talking about? Like,
Mhm.
partner, everything." So he wrote this document called Mismach Tikva, the document of hope, and in it he wrote out to them. Uh, he wrote out that you guys love me basically because I'm a great lawyer, right? But what makes me a great lawyer is the fact that I have time to learn Torah, and is the fact that I have time to spend with my kids. Like, that's what makes the person that you guys love. So if
Yeah.
I can't have that balance, if I can't have that, then it's not going to work. And they said, yes, sure. They like sign. Obviously, it's not real. They can't actually promise that to someone. Ultimately, he left, opened up his own firm, and did his own thing. But I'm saying, on your end, the fact that you're here right now, which is the middle of the day, I think speaks volumes. So, ashrecha v'tov lach, as they say.
What were you saying?
I was saying, Kirk, that we are learning about things in Pirkei Avot, about how one embodies study Torah, how one creates a balance in one's life, and creates a hierarchy value of for the things that matter in life. And I said that Ben over here is a perfect example, because in the middle of a workday in a prestigious in
It's
a tech
summer.
job that he is stopping to sit and study and learn Torah.
It's
I think that's a
summer.
beautiful balance.
I don't know how it is in Israel, but in America, it's summer. So, do they have kids off in school in summer in Israel?
Yeah, of course, but like, parents don't have summer. People that work never have
It's
summer.
more work in the summer than it is.
I just work, like, I will not work for the next, and it started at like 21, and it will end at 70 years old. And it's just every
Wait,
day.
adults don't have summer?
No, Kirk,
Oh,
we don't.
okay. Well, yeah, because my dad is a teacher, so maybe that's why.
Yes, teachers have summers off, correct? That's part of the deal. Um, I would also, I would say there are people that vacation, right? They save up sick days, and they save up vacation days, and they combine it into a stretch where they could take, let's say, 2 weeks off, maybe three, and then they plan a trip around that, right? So, for example, my summer, my family's going to go up north, the north of Israel, and I
That's
will.
near Tel Aviv.
No, further up north, where the war is going on, and
With Lebanon.
I mean, not that far north, but like near Tiberias, near the Kinneret.
Okay.
Between Lebanon and Tel Aviv.
Right, exactly. Between Lebanon and Tel Aviv. And while we're up there, I'm going to be joining them. Right. I'll be coming up every Wednesday night. So I'll be there for a long weekend and then leave Sunday night to go back to work. They'll be there, but we have to keep the lights on, the cars going, So work. May we all find solace and all win the lottery and be able to chill and relax and just be able to drown in the ocean of Torah. And that is why one has to do, it's called likvoa itim la Torah. One must anchor and set times to study Torah, because otherwise you get lost in the rat race. Aside from Shabbat, right? So one should have a lot of chavrutot, which is our study partners and study groups. So those are important things. And again, Ben is doing a fantastic job doing that. Okay. Getting back into it, not round three, but like part 3 of
the same Mishnah.
Of the same Mishnah. It's all good.
It's a big Mishnah, right? It's 49 Kinyanei Torah.
I guess let's continue. Let's start from Ve'eno Machzik Tova La'atzmo, because is that where we are right now?
Yeah, I think about there.
All right, it's off on the English though. So where are we on the English right now? Let's see.
So credit for
oneself,
not taking credit for oneself. Is that
not taking credit for oneself? Is that the one? That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay. Ve'eno machzik tova la'atzmo. Right. So we don't want to be attributing to ourselves things that we didn't learn, and we have to recognize that not only did I not, this is not my invention, or this is not my theory or my idea, even if it was, that too is obviously inspired by God ultimately, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, but you can. What I was saying is, you can still take credit for something even if you're proverbially standing on the shoulders of giants.
So that's exactly the difference, because like you could say thinking I need to thank God, that's like a little abstract. So first of all, definitely also when you're studying Torah, obviously, but all things. And I would say from God is the top of the hierarchy, you have to realize without your teachers, without your parents, right? It's just a recognition of like, when there's people that win the Nobel Prize, they call their parents first because they realize like their mother doesn't know quantum mechanics, but if it wasn't all the time and invested into him, he wouldn't have been there, right? So it's recognizing that automatically. They're saying in the Torah, we say kochi ve'otzim yadi, my strength and the strength of my arm and my hand, right? So I built this, I did this, look at me, I'm man, right? And that's not the attitude. The attitude is, yes, I built all those things, but it's because the way we start in the morning with Modeh Ani, it's because all this is possible due to God. And Judaism is always going to take you back to that place. So yes, you are allowed to, if you are the Nobel Prize winner, you are the Nobel Prize winner, is just to not look in the mirror and think to yourself, look at me, I did this all myself, right? It's to recognize the people around you, your support system, and of course, ultimately, God himself, right? Because without it, you wouldn't have achieved that ultimately. And not taking also credit for yourself. Obviously, you want to make sure that people feel comfortable passing on this information. You want to make sure that other people get to share and enjoy this information. And if you make it feel like it's only yours, sometimes people might feel more weary on doing that. Again, I'm not getting into like IP and things like that, right? That's a different topic. It's just more about an attitude one should have.
Yeah.
Okay. That next is ahuv. Yes.
Likeableness. Yeah.
Likeable, right? So this is being likable, being beloved, making sure you are a I don't know what I said last time. Maybe I said a tactful person, or knowing sociably how to interact, right? So this is, you don't want to be the guy yelling in the middle of the party randomly. You don't want to be drawing unnecessary attention to yourself. Be a person that is loved, that is beloved, that walks inside, that's likable, that people say like he's a great dude. You don't have to be the coolest guy in the party. You just want to be a likable person. And Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. Ultimately, when he gives you the rule about he talks about how, I don't know if it's one of his rules, but you don't want like other people to look at your kid and like give him a fake smile or be annoyed about that, right? And that's because you want to raise people that are going to be likable, so people want to engage with them. And there's a list of things that obviously emerge from being likable, right? The fact that you're making it into your circles, as Jordan Peterson says, from the age of 4, basically, or Piaget says, from the age of 4, you're being socialized through your environment of the kids around you.
And
if you're not likable, right, and if your parents don't teach you not to, like, no, you have to wait your turn, then you're going to have a problem. Ohev et hamakom, right? This is the love of God. As we say, hamakom, the place, is also what we call God himself. So this is just very pure, very simple. Of course, you have to love God. You have to be thinking about that constantly, right? And in the context of the Torah, we're talking about you're loving him because he is the giver of the Torah, right? So there's the sense of, when I get saved from a plane crash, I'm not thinking of God, the giver of the Torah at that point. I'm thinking of God as like, oh my God, thank you for saving me, master of the universe, or like my dad, so to speak. Here it's focusing you when you're in the study hall, when you're studying Torah. Yes, he's all those gods, quote unquote, as well. He's all those elements are true in him. But at that point, focus on loving God because of he's the giving of the Torah, because he's gifted you this amazing gift. So again, while you're learning, I'm sure you'll discover and tap into many other aspects of your relationship with God. But at the very least, there should be the concept that he is the giver of the Torah. And in this context, I would say that should be like sort of the knee-jerk reaction of loving God in this sense.
Yeah, just can I say one thing about the previous one about likableness?
Sure.
You were telling me the other day about Emmanuel Levinas. And he had...
I might have, or it could have been Yosef. Could have been me.
And well, the last Pirkei Avot stream, and
oh yeah, so that was me. Okay.
Yeah, and he was saying, to my understanding, Levinas has this concept of like the face of the other.
Yep.
Does that tie back into likableness, or?
Yes, I mean that's like, yes, and that's order, like I'm saying, in order to have like an I thou that, let's say, Buber talks about, you also need to be likable, right? Like if you are a pariah, then then that requires from your fellow Jew to wear a different mode. He's not looking at you anymore. He then has to start thinking about, even though people might seem like lowly, still interact with them. And you should always assume the best in people, because initially you want to assume their worth, because this person's now has become problematic, right? So then it requires more from the society to still try to accommodate you. But you as an individual, what you could do on your end is obviously be likable. So, but yeah, so as far as seeing the other person's face and recognizing that, and ultimately recognizing God's image in everyone, that would be ideal. Nevertheless, I'm sure there's someone in your school that you can't stand, right? But God's image is in him, right? Yet it's very difficult to see that sometimes.
Yeah.
Ohev et, where we're at right now. Ohev et tzedakot. Yes.
What is this?
Loving charity, right? Or loving
others, or what does it say here? Love of humanity.
Righteousness, or
humanity.
Was this the one we had with Tzadkanut? I can't remember right now.
I'm not sure. Right, it was love of God you just spoke, and then love of humanity, right? So that goes together too.
Right, correct. No, for sure. And then there's Ohevet Tzedakot, loving charity over here. It says over there.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about this. If there's like another version of this being in Tzadkanut, and then they were talking about more of like an ethical person or a righteous person. Mm-hmm. But if it's Tzedakot, then it's at that point it's talking about, and you could check in the magical book, Ben. I don't know if you're doing that now, but if not, then it's obviously talking about the concept of charity, which we've spoken about earlier. So here it's just saying, of course, someone that's being charitable, someone that's being understanding, and that tzedakot could be both from a financial perspective, from an intellectual perspective, from an emotional perspective, right? Being there for the other, being charitable with your time. So it's a general charity. And again, you could also focus on the mitzvah of charity itself.
Yeah.
Ohev et hamesharim.
Love
of justice.
The love of justice. We were just over love of justice.
Also, in Hebrew, the term would be yashar, like straight, right? So this is like justice would be sort of the straight and narrow path in a certain sect, right? So the Torah is the straight path, and the people who love it and are seeking seeking to connect to it, right? You need people with integrity. Obviously, we also talk about this when we're trying to in the Torah when we're trying to look for the attributes of our judges as well, right? So the people that are trying to bend it to the direction they want, they're lost, so to speak. And if you bend it in such a way that it reaches you where you're at, right? It's no longer the Torah, right? You just bend it now to your will, and it goes the other way. Anyone that watched or Kirk in this sense, I would say Jacob might be saying that I am trying to bend the halacha with like the things I want to be doing right now.
Yeah.
To put it into context with you based on our conversation we had earlier this morning.
Yeah, and where's that? I believe it's in Deuteronomy. You remember the verse that goes like, "Justice, justice, thou shalt pursue."
You're writing out.
Sorry.
I think what he was saying, I was hearing him. He said he was referring to the
Testing. Is it working now?
I could hear you now.
Okay, I was gonna ask. Do you remember what verse? I believe it's in Deuteronomy that says, "Justice, justice, thou shalt pursue."
Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. It is in Deuteronomy. Tet, Vav, Tet Zayin. I don't know why I'm doing this. We could check it out. Tzedek tirdof. Dvarim, Tet Zayin, Kaf. So Deuteronomy. Yeah, it's in Deuteronomy. What's Tet Zayin? Tet Zayin is okay. Kaf, verse 20. Yeah. So what's up? What about it, Kirk?
Just give me 1 sec. So I've heard Rabbi Skobach, who is a very beloved rabbi. He's talked about like what is the bottom line of Judaism? Like why was Abraham chosen? And I do believe this notion of justice of like having a particular mode of being where the operation is recognizing we're in a fallen state of humanity after Adam, trying to uplift. And to my understanding, the idea of the Torah, there's an idea that, like, yes, the main modus operandum why the Torah was given, and they didn't just stick with the seven Noahide lost all of humanity, was so that way they could have a nation of priests who could uplift in injustice, if that makes sense. Or
yeah, that makes sense, and we really want to. I advise you to take a look at that verse. There's different interpretations of why there's the doubling of the word justice.
So what verses is? You said Deuteronomy in English, please.
Deuteronomy. Why am I blanking on what's Tet Zayin? Tet Zayin is.
I don't know the Hebrew
17.
number.
I know you don't know the word.
17.
17, exactly. 17, verse. What did I say? Chaf, so 20.
Okay.
Right. So there's different aspects of justice, and stressing the concept of justice. So interesting stuff over there. The Ibn Ezra has something interesting there as well. Enjoy, as they say. So where do we stop?
Ohev et hatochechot.
Ohev is a tochechot. So that is love of rebuke, right?
So this is
I'm sorry.
This is so to my understanding, Ben Noach don't have any mitzvah of rebuke, even if a fellow Ben Noach violates an aspect of Noahide law. That this only applies to Jews.
There isn't a mitzvah of rebuke. That doesn't mean there isn't proper conduct of rebuke, right? There's and again, all these things really manifest. It's not a chicken and the egg, but sort of you need to have a community, and then these things can make sense. Like with individuals, I would be I don't know if you want to be splitting hairs with Joe, your neighbor. Like you finally found someone that's like a Noahide like you. Maybe you shouldn't be holier than thou, so to speak, and now push them away, right? So once you get to a community and you want to be supporting, and we spoke about this in previous chapter is how even when you're rebuking, one has to do so very, very carefully, right? You want to make sure it's a rebuke and not a stare. It depends when it's happening during the time of the act or not. One has to be very sensible about doing such a thing. Sensitive.
And the Chofetz Chaim talks a lot about the laws of slander and the laws of rebuke, and there's an idea that like you rebuke somebody with the intention that they're going to hear and change their behavior, but to my understanding, there's no mitzvah even for a Jew to rebuke if somebody else isn't going to listen to the rebuke because of the different place they are at in life.
Correct. So there's an interpretation that says that if you know he's not going to listen to you, then obviously then you're exempt from that case of doing that. And then you would have to be splitting hairs like, is he going to hear from me if he's like, if I'm a man and he's a woman, if I'm an adult, so like, that's could get expanded by when it makes sense for someone to rebuke, right? Like it could be my 13-year-old son is now commanded to rebuke, but maybe he shouldn't be rebuking the cab driver that's like 40 years old and smoking a cigarette. Like, I don't know how well that interaction is going to go necessarily.
Right. I heard about somebody saying that if you have, I don't know if this is an halacha, but maybe we spoke about it. If you have a good idea, tell it to a rabbi or to a rich person so they can share that. And then people will be more inclined to listen to them than maybe if you are, let's say, if you're a lower status. But yeah. But
right. If you want to get those numbers, isn't that called like grifting? It's like people like,
so I had something here about loving rebuke. So how is it different? Because so we spoke about tochechot now, rebuking one another. So between men and man, but obviously, and as we learned in the parasha, there's the rebuke that comes from God, which is also in some ways synonymous with suffering. And at the top of the page here, you can see like one of the kinyanim is kabbalat isurim, accepting suffering. So how is that different than?
Well, why are you assuming that rebuke is suffering though?
I'm saying it's synonymous. Yeah, I'm assuming it's synonymous because, well, if we look at the rebuke that we read last week, it tells us.
You mean the rebuke we read last week, like in the weekly portion?
Yes.
Got you. Okay.
What was the weekly portion rebuke?
That was the last chapter of the book of Leviticus, Bechukotai. Mm-hmm. And if in my dictates, in my decrees, right? If you keep them, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. So Ben's saying like the thumbs down if you don't keep them, that's sort of like the result of not behaving properly. And is that not basically like being called out? And that call out is the rebuke, right? Yeah. So I'm saying the rebuke we could be doing, right, is and calling someone out, which could be like unpleasant for us, right? It's still important for him to act correctly. Now, he might not know that this is not the correct manner, right? There's a difference between the people of Israel, right? Suddenly, Jeremiah didn't have an issue with like the single dude praying to an idol, right? It's because it became spread across, right? When God destroys the earth, v'timaleha aretz Hamas, right? Like all the land was full of this concept, right? Hamas, nothing to do politically, of course, and so I would say God's punishments, I would say generally are also talking to like the nation of Israel, to the people of Israel. Of course, there's individual laws, but it's also talking about to the people, right? And also what's going to happen to the land, right? Like if I'm doing good things, I'm a good Joe, but my neighbors are problematic, and now there's a famine, right? But I didn't do anything wrong. That's not a rebuke necessarily to me. That's rebuke to the community I'm in and the family I'm with.
Yeah.
I would say this tochecha here is more about the individual. We're talking about like the guy living with his neighbor, seeing someone doing something wrong right now. This is not necessarily you should be calling out your community. So I would say they do overlap, but they're different with regards to scale, and definitely with regards to how you're seeing it in last week's parsha. It does, of course, talk about individuals as well, but the Torah, generally speaking, is nation building. And that's like a collective.
Yeah.
All right. Umitrachek min hakavod. Fleeing from honor, right? So we talked about earlier about like the different crowns on your head you could have, and also like, the Torah crown you want, and try to like escape unnecessary honor if you don't need it, right? So here too, like, of course, the honor of Hashem is, of course, important for me. And I could understand that personally and internally, but I'm running away from, let's say, honor from, I'm sorry?
I think he was glitching. Kirk was glitching a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
We still don't want, we're still not chasing from the honor of others, right? And we also could learn Torah more truthfully, and we could admit if we made a mistake if we don't have the considerations of honor, right? If I know that if I make a mistake, no one's gonna like, I'm not gonna like lose my title or be canceled necessarily. Then it's sort of like the 10-year, right? At that point, I don't care anymore. So it's very important to make sure that you're not, and it's only the person that's distancing from honor is clearly a person that's in an honorable position, right? Like we're not talking to the guy that's not in this place. It's talking about the rock star, right? That has his tenure, but not now running after that. Instead, he used his position to make sure that he can now speak truthfully or admit when he made a mistake.
Well, Hezi, there is an idea that like people who speak often are the people who don't know, and people who know don't speak. It's like people who are very gifted know that they're gifted, but they also know what they don't know, and because they know that what they don't know, they have more humility. Whereas if somebody doesn't know almost anything, then they don't know what they don't know, and they're going to speak very confidently on a subject.
You are tapping into the words of Pirkei Avot, right? Siag lachokma shtika, which is like a fence for wisdom is silence, right? Also, like we said earlier, know when to speak, know your place when you're speaking, know the people around you. So all these things.
What's the name of that? It's like a law or something like of like people who are very confident or very ignorant. I forgot the name of the law. Like something's law.
They're very confident or very ignorant.
Yeah, it's something's law.
You don't mean like in Jewish law. You mean like in
not Jewish law. General law. Like, yeah.
Someone's very confident is usually wrong. Ben, is this ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Something's
on the hive mind. Is this ring a bell? I don't know.
No, but it's interesting to think about the honor. It also kind of reminds me of, I like to watch sports. If I watch a player play at a team sport like soccer, you often see them talk, and let's say it's an acclaimed player. People would ask him, do you think he had a good game? Do you think he's going to win this individual award? Or like they mentioned that. And then you always see the player, usually, right? They say, no, it's not, I'm not like the team played well. I'm happy that I played well. I'm happy that the team played well and that I was able to contribute. And obviously there's something that they're doing. They're playing into it, but also, I mean, we can ask the question, why is that what they're playing into? But also, I think as a player, especially when you're playing with other people, being focused on the honor, on the specific individual kind of benefit that you can get from something, reduces or blocks the flow that you can have with the whole team, or with if you're learning Torah, right? You're interacting with the sages. If you're thinking just about the honor that you can get for yourself, I can see how that could also block the flow that you're having in conversation with those sages. So it's
of course, because I want, right? Mm-hmm. I even want the wisdom, right? I don't want to share that. Like we just said earlier, if I take credit for myself, right, other people are also going to feel less comfortable to, participate with me.
Yeah.
And that's also true, because there's a sense of like mine. I would also mention that we have mentioned in the past, Ben, that like a great rabbi, right? Like he's allowed to sort of appreciate the honor that's being given to him, but that's not to him. He understands that it's being given to the Torah, right? Like, for example, they come say, come, great rabbi, come speak and sit in this chair. He's not gonna be like, no, have me on the floor. He understands that he's representing Torah. And because he's representing Torah, this is like sort of why the Urim Tumim, right? The chest plate of the high priest, why does it have gemstones on it? It's because the world sees that as important, right? Why do we have gold? It's not because God cares about the gold, but he understands that in the world of humans, this is necessary to create some sort of hierarchy to show that this is very, very special, right? So,
right, yeah.
I would say the difference is Michael Jordan, even if he's saying like, listen, ultimately it's a team sport. There's a part of him that, like you said, is saying that because that's the thing that you need to say as part of like the game that's being played. And that's because you don't want people to think you're necessarily like, just thinking about yourself, but ultimately it's cyclical because even if Michael Jordan, like it really isn't the rest of the team, you yourself are amazing, but that's only because this is a God-given talent that you have. And the talent is jumping high, running fast, whatever it is.
Right.
So even there you'd say he can't necessarily take.
Yeah, I thought you were going somewhere. It's just slightly different, but I mean, I still agree and understand what you're saying. But it's also interesting that there's a level that might be even higher than that, where and this is why I like the midrash about David and the kings, and it has to do with ishtadlut versus belief in God, bitachon, and it says that David was able to not only run after his enemies, capture them, and kill them, and do justice. He was able to do that and still have bitachon in God. That, like, yes, he did everything himself, but God gave him his power. But all the kings after him, the king after him was able to pursue and catch, but he didn't kill them, because he was like, if I'm gonna kill them, I'm gonna take too much. I'm gonna take too much responsibility. I'm gonna take too much credit. Sorry, so I can't kill them. I'll leave that to God. And then the king after that was pursued his enemies, but didn't catch them, because he thought, if I catch them, I'll take credit for catching them, and then my belief will get lower. So David was on a higher level, and he was able to say that. And I'm saying that because you can see how that is a high level, but also I was reading like a bunch of Hasidic stories, and you can see how they have stories about the Hasidic masters, where you see people are like saying, I can bring the Messiah, or like a bunch of them saying that, and it's like very odd. You think, is this humility or not? And like obviously we can talk about Moses saying he's the most humble person. Again,
exactly. So you could only say that if, well, there's two different versions of it. Like when they say God was speaking through Moses, right? There's a sense which is, what does that mean? Moses nullified himself completely, and only when you fully nullify yourself can you like then speak that way, right? So the Chassid master has like really, there's an ego death. He's speaking now not from an ego place. He's speaking from like, this divine place right now, which is speaking truth, right? So there's not an ego element to it. There's other people that interpret, no, Moses is so confident and full of himself in a healthy way, he could confidently speak about what God's talking about because he's fully aligned. He knows himself. He's aware of himself. And once you're fully actually aware of yourself, not in an unhealthy, egotistical way, you could then speak sort of what God wants you to say, because again, you are in perfect orientation, so to speak. Now,
but there hasn't been
I would just say that if Michael Jordan would, every interview would be like, God gives me everything, right? That would be like, that wouldn't be an ego place, right? That would be a place of like, he's saying like, yes, I am the story is me, but the story is really not me. So then it totally makes sense for you to pick up then the trophy at the end of the day, because at that point you would be symbolizing to everyone someone that is great, and he appreciates that the source of his greatness is God, right? Yeah. So then everyone would be looking up, even further up, right? But that's not MJ's style, as I understand.
And there hasn't been a prophet nearly on the level of Moses for a very, very long time.
Or ever.
Yeah, I mean, ever, but like at least during after Moses, there are still some prophets in Tanakh who aren't nearly as high as Moses, but it's still pretty high. But to my understanding, that general belief in descent of the generations basically means after the codification of the Talmud, there hasn't really been, we've just been a lower connection in that sense.
I mean, I agree and disagree with that statement. That's like a very...
It's not an absolute principle, though. Like, I think descent of the generations... I understand the concept. I don't think it's absolute. There are obviously great people in every generation, and unwise as well. So
much ink has been spilt on those lines. So, all right, onwards.
The law I was talking about, by the way, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I forgot the name.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay. Velo magis libo betalmudo.
Reluctance, lack of arrogance in learning.
Lack of arrogance in learning. Okay, right? You're not to be arrogant. Don't have arrogance. Don't be haughty about what you're learning. And the fact that you're learning itself, right, is a tremendous thing. And it's not something that you need to boast about. Like the fact that you're already in the study hall is the win, right? So you could be happy with that fact. But the attitude is not to run around and be like shoving in people's faces and being like, how great this is. Like, know your place, recognize yourself.
I mean, but this seems kind of repetitive of the last one. It seems like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot seems to be reciting a similar thing in most of the time. Like lack of arrogance in learning, it's a similar concept to not embracing like honor.
Yeah, but it's talking to two different levels, right? The guy that's honor, that's only talking about the people that are playing in the VIP lounge, right? This level is talking about you just had a great idea while you're learning the Talmud page. You're just Kirk that's 16 years old. Slow your roll when you get him and be like, oh, you guys see that? That was awesome. Like, maybe it was. Like, chill out. That's not a discussion that I'm having with the VIP lounge, right? Because when they say things, it's already built in that we're impressed by their learning. Right. So like that's already, we understand that. That's why the question of their honor comes up. But here, this is someone that like, no one's looking at me to be the next rabbi, but I could go around and telling people, I have a Pirkei Avot class and, I could start talking about myself. Like I'm giving these great explanations and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Like, wow, like, no, again, no one's looking at me at like a rabbi, but that would be me being arrogant with what I'm learning. I'm using the things I'm learning to be arrogant about. Another example would be there's a very, very difficult tractate called Yevamot, right? So you would say, do you think, dude, I don't know if you could date my sister. She's like out of your league, dude. Like I finished like Yevamot like 4 times. Right. So that would be me using my learning to boast myself. Right. So that would be a mistake. And no one thought I was going to be the rabbi of the city.
Yeah, so, that makes sense. So the lack of arrogance for honor is for people who already have some sort of prestige, whereas this is like speaking to like more everyday people who still do engage in learning.
And in many, the Mishnah is talking to us in multiple levels to multiple people and at different times.
And I think the shot also that you can have is, and when you work with people, I mean, any engagement that you have with people, you understand that saying something once or one way does not necessarily convey a simple idea. So sometimes you need to convey the same idea twice, 3 times, and maybe shift a little bit here, the word here, and then you help a person actually remember it, understand it better. It's very common when you just have these kind of discussions or communication when you're trying to deliver a certain perspective or idea to another person, and like you say it once and you think, okay, I delivered the idea, and it does not happen. So,
right,
it's a very simple interpretation, but I think
it's a very good interpretation. I don't know why we didn't start with that one. Thank you, Ben. Okay, ve'no sameach.
Let's see.
In Hora'ah. I'm seeing in rulings, ve'no sameach be'hora'ah.
Reluctance to hand down rulings.
Okay, exactly. He's not loving that, and that I mean, that's not because one is scared to do so, right? But when one is deciding on a halachic matter, or as Jacob likes to say, right, like binding in earth like in heaven, or
the term is like isur v'heter, like what is prohibited and permitted.
Right. So you want to not involve your own personal thought. And again, like sort of an ego. Obviously, you're the one who's thinking, right? But you want to make sure you're really precise, right, in stating what Hashem's word is to the person that's asking you, right? So someone comes to you and asks you a question. It's more than Chazi, should I do this room like navy blue or like harbor blue, right? So like, I guess worst case scenario, we'll paint it again. But if I'm telling them like, this is the word of God, right? So one has to be very, very precise, and shouldn't be rushing to be like, yes, no, good, wrong. Take your time, consider these things. This doesn't mean an invitation that it should take like 40 years necessarily to find something out, right? People could be able to answer quicker than that for some things, even complicated things. Nevertheless, one should be hesitant when ruling. I would say like I would qualify that with again within context, right? But one should be careful when doing so. Right? Nase be'ol im chaverot. I guess like we're off right now because we're like one line here and all the way on top on the other side. I got you. Okay, participating in the burden of one's fellow. Right. So this seems quite easy to understand. Us helping each other. Right. We're not here alone. Right. Caring for others, and the Torah is not coming from like a very narrow and limited place. Right. It has a deep connection to all the people of Israel and all the people in the world, and it's expecting you to take responsibility. And that's why you have built in with all these laws and particular things and X many days, and you can't make hybrids. Nevertheless, keeps on hammering. The foreigner, the ger, the poor, the widow, these are just built into the system nonstop all the time, which what makes also the Torah so beautiful and amazing, definitely for its time and how novel it was for its time. And that's why, again, the Torah speaks in a way that is addressing its surroundings, because it wants to stress the difference between it and its surroundings. So hence we see many quote unquote copy paste sort of language. But then again, that is to, you have to imagine the Israelite hearing this and he's like, this sounds just like what I heard about my boy Hammurabi, but this is such crazier because all these twists and all these additions. So again, it's not in any way to deter from us or to scare us, but it only shows even more how God's greatness needs to be appreciated and how his wisdom is infinite. Okay. By the way, does the book have anything else about that comment about Naseh be'ol chavero?
Not enough for me.
All right. Umachria lechaf zchut.
Judging him to the side of merit?
Judging him to the side of merit. This is a very, very, very important thing. As we say,
So is this about recognizing other people's merits?
Well, yes, correct. So you have to be judging people favorably, ultimately, right? You have to be, when you see someone, you have to give room that there's different sides to each equation. What's the vantage point you're looking at right now? And you have to understand.
Is that what you're trying to explain the other day when Edward, that Armenian guy, when you were debating him about Israel to Jacob, that like you're trying to, even though you think his views are obviously very silly, you're trying to judge him favorably,
Correct.
like understand where he's coming from?
Correct. So the extreme to that is in Likutei Moharan, we talk about how
Which is a Breslov.
Correct.
I believe it's a Breslov
He takes this to another level. I've mentioned this in the past, so you'll excuse me. Maybe Ben knows what I'm talking about, but da sheyesh ladun kol adam lekav zchut, ve'afilu mi shehu rasha gamur, יש לחפש ולמצוא בו איזה מעט טוב, שבאותו מעט אינו רשע, ועל ידי זה מעלה אותו לכף זכות, ויכול אף להחזירו בתשובה. Right? So it says that you must be looking favorably, judging people favorably, seeing their merit, not only with like the regular Joe Schmo, but an evil person, a completely evil person. And you have to try to find some inkling of good. And by finding that inkling of good and pointing it out to him, you might be able to create just a little of enough gap to raise him up to another level.
But what I would say is this also, you have to contextualize it as well. So, like, I think what Jake was trying to explain is contextually, the goal of TLC is to uplift voices of people whose opinion can contribute significantly to the dialogue and in progressing the dialogue. And like, even though you can try and say there might be one issue here or there where we're going to try and meet middle with Edward or whatever, at the end of the day, he's just not contextually in that space. And
We don't
so,
know that. And by the way,
but we do know that. If he's saying that
but you're
0
right,
deaths,
Kirk, you're right. You're right. In some cases, when the stakes are high, right? When it's a random stream, right? Like not like a
yeah, but
premiere,
you
like
also have to remember that Jacob, there are a lot of media sources you can find online where they'll be saying similar things to what Edward was saying. Like, and I'm not saying, listen, I'm not going to talk too political. Jacob can make the policies for Jacob's channel. It's not my channel, it's not my decision. But I think I understand the idea. We have to put things in context, and it's like if you have a lot of streams Edward can go to talk about these ideas, they can talk to him at that level. But this is an elevated. We're not here to have the first grade kindergarten type discussions.
you are right about that. And we're like, we're mixing up a few different things over here. I would just say with regards to that incident, I'll take an extreme. It's not telling you. I mean, even though you would say like Rasha Gamor is even Hitler, right? And
It's not, but it's not even about how bad somebody is. The point is finding the best in people in context is good.
correct,
But
correct.
that's
Right. So if
but that's
someone's running to me with a knife outside, right, this is not the right time to be like, you know what? Maybe he just wants to cut my hair, right? Maybe he just so like I understand that in
Go to
context.
barber.
What my argument in that case was, I don't know if Edward, I forgot his name, whatever his name is, I don't know if he's ever interacted with Israeli Orthodox Jew that also is an Anglo who could seem and could potentially shed different light on the image he sees in his head of what that person looks for. And to me, to be able to do so properly and to be able to engage in him on a deeper level with avoiding the politics level. And then, right, so if I could first talk to Edward about the fact that like maybe him and I like Batman comics, and then I could then zoom back up to having a different conversation. Now, once he's already seen me as another person, then he might hear things I have to say differently. And that would be
I understand. I do
that's
think
more of a tactic of how one speaks and how I would say I didn't even assume the best in him yet. I'm just assuming that there's a part of him that he and I could connect on. You'd be right though. It would be inappropriate to do that during like a school debate or during, let's say, a live television show. If it's on Jacob's channel at I don't know 12 o'clock at night, I don't know, like if like I'm wasting everyone's time necessarily, but like you said,
yeah.
it's a channel.
Yeah, and I think I understand your point. And I do think so if you in say the Discord decide to have a conversation where you want to humanize yourself to Edward, I think Jacob would be a lot more understanding of that. It's just again, it's like I'm trying to debate with myself internally because I don't exactly know what my position is. How much credence do you want to give to people who don't know? Because it's important to recognize, a broken clock is right twice a day, but it's still a broken clock. And in context, a fixed clock, it can be wrong, and a broken clock can be right. But I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
I got you. Again, also a topic we could open up and have larger conversations about. Okay. So we spoke about that. Next is umamido al haemet.
Correcting him?
Where is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Correcting him. Yep, correcting him. Again, in Hebrew, there's more like, in this case, emet is obviously like one of God's name as well, right? So the concept of truth has a theological element as well, right? And this is different than like rebuking, right? But you don't want to ignore if your friend is erring. And this is not necessarily on like, on like a mitzvah or a commandment level, right? This is like, this could be a best friend. This could not be your friend. This wants to be more about, this is talking about the way your friend is like living his life, so to speak, right? To properly engage him and see if your friend, and we could see this obviously when people have interventions with their friends and things like that, right? So you want to be making sure that he is expressing himself properly, that he's aware of his surroundings, that he's taking care of himself, right? And again, this is in the context of, this is the true friend you have, right? This is someone that you could stand and talk to and have a relationship with. So many of us or today's culture, I could see a lot of people have issues, and friends are not necessarily there or don't know to be like, this is your friend reaching out. This is a friend calling out for help. This is someone that actually needs you over there. And being a friend is not necessarily giving someone a ride, but it's sometimes saying the truth to them, right?
So the difference between correcting and rebuke is that a rebuke is more of a halakhic, more of a mitzvah
Correct.
context,
Correct.
and a correction is maybe more general, ethical.
Exactly. Well, even in the ethical, many times it's going to overlap with a commandment, right? Because the commandments are usually trying to cover most ethical behavior. But this would be a sense like you could even find a halacha of like, not dressing appropriately because then like you look like a bum. But generally speaking, right, if like you're having bad habits and like, again, it's someone reaching out to you from like a friend level and saying like, your choices in life, forget about like whether or not like you're keeping the halacha. Great, you're in synagogue, you're here on time, like that's great. But there's other stuff, the other things in your life which you're losing control over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how, it's interesting that you can see this series of that starts with maybe Noseh Be'olim Chavero, like sharing the burden with your brother, with your friend, is that it's like a series. It's almost like here is what you do in order to how you behave with your friends. How do you go to peace, right? So you start with showing them that you're on their side, or that you can share some of their burden, right? And then
before that, okay, sorry, you're right. Sorry, correct. You could share their burden.
Share their burden, and then maybe that allows you to, and then you also tell them about you bias towards their good traits, right? So you try to see them
because you took their burden and you stood in their place. Right? Don't judge him until you're in his place. But if you've already put yourself under his burden, right, then you are in theory connecting yourself to his place, right? Which would then allow you, like you're saying, Ben, to then sequence I could and I should judge you favorably.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So internally, it allows you to have this theory of mind idea where you can see his place better, but also in terms of the relationship with the person, if you share the burden with the person and you also that person can see that you're trying to see them in a good light, you are also able to tell them the truth, right? I don't know how he says it, right? Get to correct them,
right?
And that will lead to a peaceful resolution, right? Because you can correct somebody. But then they're
but that's the last one, mommy. You were talking about like Mami Da.
Right.
I don't know if that's the last one, but Mami Da La Shalom right here.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, getting into peaceful resolution. So it's almost like what you said. Like if we're thinking about the example of like having a debate in Jacob's channel, you can try to correct somebody, but because you're not, again, and this is harkens to the being likable, because you're not likable or you didn't show something. You don't have credit in their eyes to say anything, and then they're less likely maybe to take your position. But if you do all that, then it can lead to a peaceful resolution.
Exactly, because the peaceful resolution, right, is the shalom, is the shalem, right? It's the whole, right? It's not shalom. It's not like hello, right? Which we use it today to say hello and goodbye, or peace even. Mm-hmm. Rather, it means completion. And in completion, usually there is peace is a result of completion. But right. I would say that, like just like Ben was saying, and to my understanding, it is like during this learning, and in this interaction that we're having, again, we're talking about in the context also of Torah. There's a disagreement about them, and sometimes it could turn personal. Luke Thompson reached out to me and asked me, like, he saw my conversation with Jacob, and he said, like, I just want to make sure you're okay. Right. And my sense was like, there was nothing, the personal relationship between Jacob and I is always in peace. Right. Mm-hmm. The disagreement wasn't about, it's only we are disagreeing about opinions. Yeah. And so you could still have a disagreement. And that's why it says Ma'amidah la shalom. Right. Like Ma'amidah is still this, it's sort of, you're confronting him. Right. In a certain mm-hmm. sense. However, it's still peaceful because it's all for heaven's sake. Right. The disagreement is not between Jacob and Chezi. The disagreement is about the ideas that they have. Chezi's ideas are better ideas, and that's no. But yes. So that's what we're disagreeing about. But ultimately, there's love and peace between us, and that leads us to umityashev libo betalmudo, right? Mm-hmm. And what is it in the English one?
Deliberation is study.
Peaceful resolution, and then deliberation in study. Okay, so in your own heart, right? Your not your physical heart, but the sense of being settled in what you were learning, right? So learning deeply and examining and understanding what you're actually. Mitzvah also comes from sitting down, right? So like being settled or being set, grounded, anchored in what you're learning as well, and you're not resting until your heart, in this case, is complete with understanding, right? So like there's a sense where it's always going to be missing until it fully understands. And the only way it's going to fully understand is if you sit down and give it the time of day to really fill your heart, so to speak, with Torah, right? So, with Torah. And you want to make sure that like it makes sense in your words, right? So from, let's say, a spiritual sense, you're filling out, you're nourishing your heart with Torah, and that's the word libo. And on a, let's say, more practical sense, you want to make sure, like, as they say in Hebrew, dvarim shenichnasim lalev, right? Things that go deep or they pierce deep. So you want to make sure that the Torah you're learning is not on a surface level, but rather actually settled and made its way deep into your heart, deep into who you are, into your being. Shoel umeshiv.
Asking and answering.
Asking and answering, right? So this is more about not being embarrassed to ask when something's not clear to you, right? And stopping in your learning to answer someone else who comes to ask you something, right? Mm-hmm. So this ultimately, this is clarifying what the question is and to make sure people understand it properly. I'm only mentioning this because Jacob mentioned this recently, but he spoke about how many years ago, I was a sho'elu meshiv, right? An answering, asking man in the yeshiva I studied at. And the reason it's asking and answering, because generally you'd be like, isn't it just answering? People are asking you questions. But the asking element is you would go to chavruta, to pairs of students, like, their first year or second year there. And you go around and you see groups learning and you're like, what's going on? And they don't have a question, right? They're feeling pretty settled over here. So then I ask a question. I'm like, well, do you guys notice, this Tosafot over here? Because the challenge is this. They might have not seen that yet, right? And then they might appreciate that. That's me throwing just like a little question that you have out there. You might circle back. I might say that, and they might say, we know that, and that might lead to another question. And that's not because like I get paid per question, right? The attitude is like you just want to have like sort of this give and take. At that time, I'm there to accommodate the relevant questions and answers that, for what we're studying during that period. Yeah. But it's very important to engage with people in that manner.
That's pretty cool.
Where are we? Shomea umosif. Shomea umosif. Right. So he listening and illuminating. Love that word, illuminating, right? So I asked my questions, right? Then I got answers. I was listening. And once I listened to the answers, right? If I'm one of those fortunate ones, I can now extrapolate and innovate, right? To something new. And that doesn't prevent me from hearing like the explanation that someone gave me and then adding to that, right? So the shomea is, it's not that I heard something and I said, no, let me tell you this. It's, I heard what you had to say. I internalized it, categorized, shelved, and now I'm adding on top of that. Potentially I'm building, potentially I'm offering something else, but it's just to make sure when the shomea means I really heard it and I didn't just throw it away. I didn't cast it away. I actually took it seriously. All right. Halomed al menat lelamed vehalomed al menat laasot. Okay, so what are two of those? Learning in order to teach and learning in order to observe.
Or do.
Right? So, I'm sorry?
Or do, observe or do, not observe in terms of like watch.
Just watch, correct. To observe is to actually like embody and actually do it. It's strange that they'd use that word. So I'm not learning for myself, right? But I'm directing my studies towards what Hashem wants me to do. And I want the Torah to be able to spread as many people as possible so it could be actualized as much as possible in life, right? So I'm learning so I could just teach other people, and I'm teaching other people so that could spread so they could actually do it. That is the goal in the end of the day. We, of course, know that learning for the sake of learning has its own merits, and going to the study room and all the things we study about in the past, how I act, and when people see me in the study room and a study hall, and if there's different levels of interacting. Am I the student? Am I the middle level student? Am I the A level student? And how I interact with this level of engagement. But generally speaking, we want these things to be embodied at the end of the day, right? So all this leads to this spreading out there and being manifest in the world itself. Hamachkim et, I saw that before. Hamachkim et rabo ve'amechaven et shmu'ato. So, Hamachkim et Rabo, you could, if you want to read them, saying is making his rabbi wiser, rabbi smarter, wisening one's teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactness in conveying a teaching. So that's obviously very, very important as well. So obviously in making your teacher wiser, right? So I'm asking him questions, I'm giving him suggestions and justifications, right? So all this is opening up the teacher, right, to a newer, deeper levels of himself into this matter, right? And it's not that like, first of all, it's deeper levels for sure, but potentially as it's being discussed, newer things could be coming out as well, right? New things could emerge. And if he's doing this with humility and respect for your teacher, right? Like I shouldn't be just asking questions to nag, but rather really probing because I'm respecting the topic and I'm respecting the teacher, right? And that also allows me to, again, it's a hard balance. While respecting him, that doesn't mean I could still offer a unique insight myself, right? Adding to the teacher. Now, I don't know if you've seen this movie. You know, there's many movies where like the smart ass kid in class, the teacher asks well, you think you're so smart? How about you come and answer the question, right? And the kid goes up to the board and he answers the equation, and then the teacher is left like embarrassed, right? So that would not be what you want to do. You'd want to be like, well, if I understand what you taught me correctly, I would do this move. Does that make sense to you? Yes, very good. I think you said then we would apply this theory. And then it would make the teacher feel like I was involved. Based on what you're saying, would this make sense? And then the teacher could be like, wow, you used me to get to this point where you made something new. I could still see myself in that journey. And that's why I still see myself in you. I see myself valued in the classroom. Even though that kid might have been able to do that himself. Nevertheless, you would still want to, if you appreciate your teacher, you would want to respect him and do that for him. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like taking somebody on a journey. Like sometimes you can't be too direct. Let's call it.
Correct. We can't be too direct, and definitely to someone that's teaching, and you have to again think of the context of people around you. Hamal binit et pnei chavero, right? Someone that is embarrassing someone's person, right? So we have to do that carefully. And exactness in conveying a teaching, right? So when what I'm learning and what I'm teaching, I'm aiming it. Even if I'm adding things for myself, right? So I heard an idea of Rabbi Skobach, and now I'm adding some stuff. I need to be very careful. What I learned from my teacher are the things that the teacher said, and that like it's precise, and then the intent is precise, right? So I could use potentially different words, but I need to be very careful. Like if I say, well, Rabbi Breda said that's permissible. And then really, like he said it's permissible only in this specific case for this specific person. So that'd be very, very problematic. And if I'm adding some of my own opinion, right, I'm saying he said it's generally permissible and 1, 2, 3, I should clarify, while Rabbi Skobach doesn't think this, there are other rabbis that would even go further than what he's saying, right? And it's very hard for us to sometimes do this, and then people could think these are the opinions of your rabbi, right? So we wanted to make him, what we said earlier is like, if I can, I need to be respectful of even if I have my own idea, to make sure he doesn't feel that he was basically like useless. I want to try to make him wiser. I want to make sure I'm respecting him. Even if I like his ideas and I'm now like sharing them here too, I need to be very precise, right? It wouldn't help Amadeus Mozart, right? If I now played his song, but then I start having all these mistakes in the keys, right? Which he loud looks bad, or now people think like Mozart sucks. Or I start playing Beethoven in the middle, and someone's like, this sounded very strange to me because it was like a mix of two different things, and I don't know where Mozart ended and Beethoven started. And there too would be a fail on my end where I didn't clarify.
Right.
and saying something in the name of Omer Davar B'Shem. Yeah, okay. ואומר דבר בשם אומרו, הלמדת כל האומר דבר בשם אומרו, מביא גאולה לעולם, שנאמר, ותאמר אסתר למלך בשם מרדכי. Is that it?
That's it.
That is it. And saying something in the name of his speaker, or the one who said it to you. Thus we have learned, one who says something in the name of his speaker brings redemption to the world, as it is stated in Esther. And Esther told the king in the name of Mordechai. Just in general, those two characters, Esther and Mordechai, Marduk and Asherah, these two of these names, the fact that, like, you know, that's part of the whole Esther story, which could also be Esther, could be Hester Panim, the valence of God. We don't hear God's name mentioned in the story of Esther and Mordechai. It's so hidden that the two heroes are themselves under names of, you know, idols and exile, right? So it's to show you how deep the story was immersed in the exile. Nevertheless, of course, God prevails. That has nothing to do with what we're reading over here. That's just a little side rant. Okay, so right. Right. So if we're saying it in the name of someone's speaker, why is this so important? Right. So not only again am I saying what the teacher did say, I need to clarify what he didn't say. Right. We're going back to the previous thing, which is I am saying the thing he said. Right. So again, I'm excluding the other things, but I'm also by doing so, I am connecting it to the people who said them, right? And I'm not I'm making clear that I'm not trying to elevate myself and going back to the honor thing we said. And I'm not giving myself undue honor. So if we go back to that previous thing we mentioned about not chasing after honor, a tool to do that would be make sure you're always mention who has this idea, right? Who gave you this idea? Where does this idea come from? Where's the source? Mm-hmm. Right? And it also, well, I would say this is in the next where it takes us to, as far as it bringing redemption to the world, right? So this redemption is connecting everything ultimately to the source, right? Everything finds its place and purpose, from just the words you're saying all the way out to the grand scheme of you know, God's whole creation. Because everything is obviously a revelation from God, ultimately. Right. And by acting in this sense where you are constantly trying to go back to the source, right, you are in a certain way echoing everything has its source, right? So I made sure that you know that this idea was from Maimonides. By mentioning that and reminding myself and the people around me that everything has its source. I have the source. These rocks have the source. The tree has the source. Everything has its place and purpose. So even by making that little statement, the theological idea behind that is understanding and recognizing that God is the source for everything. And that's just by making sure I give credit where credit's due, right? Or giving credit to the person who should be getting it. And we learn this from the pasuk of Esther and Mordechai, right? Because she could have gone to Achashverosh and or Xerxes and earn her brownie points, so to speak, by saying that this is my idea. I stopped this plot of people trying to kill you. Nevertheless, right, we're told that she made sure to mention Mordechai, right? She gave him credit, and she also showed her integrity. And only 4 or 5 years later, right, does this whole thing happen, and then he goes back and he looks at the book and he remembers that Mordechai saved his life, and at the end of the day he honors Mordechai. And we learn a very very important thing about the story of Mordechai. We say that during the time of Sinai, the Israelites really didn't accept the Torah. Why? Because it was thrusted upon them, like the Midrash says. God said, like, if you don't accept the Torah, kafalim har kegigit, I'm dropping down this whole mountain on top of you, right? So they sort of had to accept it because, like, the experience was so intense. Like, you're having the master of the universe literally speak to you. Who are you? How can you even say no, right? Where is your, and this goes back to the free will that God sort of gives back to Pharaoh when he hardens his heart, right? Because Pharaoh would really just want to say, of course they could go because I'm terrified, right? So God doesn't want him to be terrified. He wants him to be himself, give him back his free will. Back to Achashverosh, we say the Gemara tells us that the Israelites, the Jews, didn't accept it in Sinai, but came to accept it willingly during the time of Achashverosh. And in a sense, there was a recognition that here too, now we realize what the source was, where this was all coming from. And now that we were saved, we could now connect all these dots and realize it's all still coming from our Father in heaven. So we now accept the rule of the Torah, but we do so willingly.
Yeah, which is why Purim is sometimes could be on a higher level than Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, if you look at it, is Ke Purim, right? With the Chaf before of it, it's like Purim, right? So there's a sense where I'm fasting and I'm getting myself to this plate of holiness, and I'm elevated. That there's another channel to that, through drinking and removing the veils and sort of allowing myself to connect through God that way as well. So, yeah.
Well, also, I've heard it explained as Yom Kippur is personal redemption and Purim is national redemption.
Yeah. Yes, that is also correct.
Is this the end of Pirkei Avot?
No, this is the end of this chapter,
but there's more chapters.
There are a few more chapters. Yeah. What's
more
next?
More Mishnayot. Yeah.
Yeah, more Mishnayot. No more chapters. This is the last chapter. Okay. Okay. Is this a long one? I think this is also a long one.
This might be a long one.
It's going down for a second, Ben.
It is.
Not so bad. All right. Very exciting. So we will continue next week.